Hello, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sarah Poulter, and I'm the Executive Director of WriteBoston, and I'm really excited to see such a great turnout for this conversation. So right now, there's a lot of public dialogue about pandemic schooling, and in this climate, it feels really important to uplift the perspectives and experiences of those closest to the issues, which are students and educators. The panel we're going to hear from this afternoon includes teachers who've worked with WriteBoston coaches and students from both Boston and Worcester. They're going to be sharing their takeaways from the last year and the changes they hope to see in schools moving forward. A little bit about the event format. So this is a webinar, which means that you'll be able to see the panelists, but you won't be able to see the other attendees. And we're going to spend the first 30 minutes in a discussion. And this portion will be unmoderated. Panelists will be responding to questions that show up on the screen. And then the last 15 to 20 minutes, we will hold to answer questions from the audience. A few notes on technology, just to make sure we're all on the same page. At any time, you can submit questions to panelists in the Q&A. So as the instructions on the screen say, at the bottom of your screen, you'll just click the Q&A button, and your name will get attached to any question that you submit. If you really like someone's question, you can use the thumbs up button, which sort of lets us know which questions are popular. We'll prioritize asking those of the panelists. You're also welcome to use the chat function for reactions or general comments, but these also will be available to anyone in the webinar to see, but try not to put questions for panelists in the chat. Those should be going specifically in the Q&A portion. The other thing to note is that we've enabled auto transcription for this webinar, which means that if you'd like to view captions, you click on the closed captioning button and hit show subtitle, and you'll be able to read along. I think that's basically it for instructions. We don't have a lot of time, so we're going to dive right in. I'd like to introduce our panelists. So I'm going to invite everyone to turn on their videos and unmute themselves, please. And like magic, all these faces appear. Fantastic. So we have with us Mike, who is a computer science teacher at Madison Park Technical Vocational High School here in Boston. We have Ace, who is a 12th grade student at Madison. We have Armely, who is a second-year teacher at Worcester East Middle School. We have Emily, who is a junior at South High Community School in Worcester. We have Ms. ML, who is a 12th grade English and English as a second language teacher at Boston International, which you'll hear us call BINcA throughout the rest of the panel. We also have Mackenley, who is a 12th grade student enrolled at BINcA. And last but not least, we have Kristen, who is also a 12th grade English and ESL teacher at Boston International. I just want to really reiterate how grateful we are to all of you to make some time after a long day of teaching and learning to share your insights with this group. So I'm going to let you guys get started. I'm going to turn myself off and we'll begin.
Thinking about last school year, what was most positive, challenging, or surprising about school during the pandemic? Thinking about this school year so far, what kinds of things are you noticing? What feels different? So I'll start with the first question. What was most positive last year? I didn't have too many positives. The pandemic was difficult. And so for me personally, it was marked by a lot of loss. However, thinking about this school year so far, one of the things that I am noticing is that the students, especially in the first few weeks, not knowing how to interact with each other, kind of a bit of awkwardness being in person. Another thing noticing this year, a big difference is going from having everything online, from the work to the conversations to everything digital, 100%, to now having physical paper and putting a physical paper in front of a student and asking them to write. The first few weeks, not even days, first few weeks, it was a bit of a challenge. And I can tell that, you know, some students didn't really know what to do. And me, again, as a teacher, kind of to adjust from spending a year on using the computer and technology to help facilitate my instruction and learning to now kind of going back to the way, try to do the way things used to be. And it seemed a bit archaic sometimes, but yeah. So again, to reiterate, what am I noticing? What am I noticing this year? The awkwardness, students not knowing really how to interact with each other. And also the difference going from having everything digital, remote, to now using physical paper, using a pen, you know, asking students to look at me. Students can no longer, you know, mute themselves or turn off the camera. We are literally physically face to face. And that's been, you know, different and definitely noticing it. And I will pass it along to Kristen.
Thanks, Miss ML. So I was doing a little bit of reflecting, and some of the positive things that I think came out of last school year were were a result of some of the partnerships that I had. And so I was able to form some really deep relationships with colleagues last year. So Ms. ML being one of them, we worked together really closely. I worked closely with a psychologist from Children's Hospital, and as a result of that, we were able to use restorative justice practices in class and do lots of circles. And so as a result of that, we were able to start a peer mentoring program. And that was really beneficial because I saw my students who were seniors really rise as mentors and provide service to their school to 10th grade students who were struggling. So that was really, really powerful. And so I do think that without these connections, it would have been hard for me to feel, for me to see success or feel engagement. And then in terms of this year, I'm thinking a lot about two things. One is stamina and how teacher and I think student stamina has shifted so much. I mean, as teachers, you know, we're often here at 7:30 in the morning and we leave at 3 or 3:30 and then we go home and then we, you know, we grade, and it's a long day, and we were kind of used to that, just moving. And last year it felt less time constrained by time. Time was a little bit more flexible. And I just think like returning to bells and returning to the 55-minute period has been, that's been kind of jarring. And the other thing that I'm noticing is that students, again, I teach seniors, are wanting like a return to traditions. So they're wanting like a senior experience, and they're wanting events and celebrations and a senior week, and to wear a senior sweatshirt. You know, we're having students that haven't been in classrooms since they were in 10th grade. So there's some loss there, and wanting to just kind of jump back into those fun celebratory situations. And I don't know, Mackenley, you're a senior at BINcA. Are you feeling that? You want to kind of get back to those rituals?
Yes, because like last year is like was like the worst year of my life, you know, as a student, because like because of the COVID, you know, like everybody had to quarantine and stuff. But like for me, some things good came out of it, because like I had some of my teachers, and they were new, and then like I had to talk to them, and then like build a relationship with them, and that was great. But then like what kept me going, like though doing the last school year, was like getting to 12th grade. Like ever since like I came into like this country, I wanted to get to my senior year and then like graduate and go to college. And then like this really kept me going. But like for sure, like those traditional things, like being a senior, like is very exciting now. And then like I don't miss last year. I don't miss it. Yeah. Emily, would you like to take on after that?
Sure. I mean, I think like what Miss ML, Miss Kristen, and Mackenley have said. Literally last year was a nightmare. Just to get to the point, it was a nightmare. Academically, me, terrible. Anyways, it was very difficult to focus on work because, you know, we're staring at a screen all the time. I can hide behind my camera, I can turn it off. And so it was very easy to just, fall asleep during class. And I think that now, after returning to in-person learning, it's just been so nice to be around other people, other students who are also learning. And, when you look your teacher in the eye after you haven't done your homework, like, you can feel the disappointment. And, like, that's helpful. It it really it shocks you into being a better student, I guess, after last year. And I think the only thing I miss from remote learning was that my school, my district, shifted our schedule so that our periods were like 70 minutes long and we could get a lot done in that 70 minutes. But now our periods are like 45 minutes, and so nothing ever seems enough to learn in that time frame. And so I guess that's kind of been one of the things that I've been trying to adjust with. Armely, how are you doing?
Hi, Emily. So I think there were some positives for me during the pandemic. I would say the main one was it was really good to see how hard teachers were working, how much we were willing to teach ourselves so that we could continue teaching. I remember last year was my very first year having a classroom of my own, so I was very nervous. I had to do a lot of training and I was completely terrified about how I was going to teach students how to write an essay and, read and analyze a book. It was very difficult. I wasn't able to even read books with my students last year up until like the end of the school year because, having students absent, having students with no internet connection was very difficult. But I think the positive was that, no matter what, we kind of kept going. I'm not necessarily a fan of resilience. I think it's a word that people use to, make people feel better about how hard they work. So it doesn't really make me feel better. It was an exhausting year. But I think I learned a lot in terms of just finding so many different ways, like specifically creative ways to like get my students to engage and to deal with problems, like, okay, my students have no internet. How can I get the work to them? Or how can I get students to, just try different things? Because a lot of it was just so new to all of them that what I found was that a lot of my students were giving up before they even tried. But we found a way to get through it. I'm seeing that at my school, we kind of loop. So all my 7th graders are now my 8th graders. So I have been able to build relationships with those students. And I can see that they did learn something last year, which has been like something very positive for me because I didn't think that was happening. What else was part of the question? Something I noticed, definitely the stamina of students. Like I think Kristen said, I'm finding it very difficult to get students to complete an assignment by the due date. I think a lot of them maybe had a lot more time last year. And now, due dates are a lot shorter. A lot is expected of them after a year that I would say was, I don't want to say relaxed, but in some ways it was. And their social emotional health is kind of been affected a lot is what I see. Surprisingly, they're very aware of it. I'm teaching 8th graders this year. I definitely had no idea what mental health even was when I was in 8th grade. So I'm noticing that they're able to advocate for themselves, which is really good. But yeah, I think they were very impacted by just loss and not being able to see friends and, not having the best environments at home as well. Yeah. I can pass it on to, I don't know who else has contributed. Mike?
I'd love to hear from Ace on this one.
Yeah, thinking about last school year, every kid was just hiding behind whatever they could, really. They didn't really care about doing the work most of the time, which I know because I was one of them. Just falling asleep during there and then waking up just seeing that my laptop's dead and that my teacher is still there when I get it back up and charged. Because I know Mr. Berger was one of them and he tried helping me the entire way, but you know, just not being in there in person, you kind of just lose confidence because there's nobody really up there in person telling you can do something. You're just sitting there behind a screen, them telling you, but you don't know the truth, really. Because if we think about like this year, there's so much, everyone has to wear a mask now in school, and like kids just hate it. They find as much ways to get outside as they can. And Mr. Perkino is considering we've had only God knows how many fire alarms. There's been a lot. Just thinking about everything that's been happening in this COVID, it's really just killing everybody. Anybody else want to go? Who has not gone? Mike Berger, you want to go?
Sure. So I really appreciate, first of all, everyone's perspective, but especially the students. And I think it was brutal for all the students and the teachers because of that. But what I've noticed, I think, is exactly what the other teachers said, that people don't know how, the students don't know how to behave with each other, partially because they really want to spend time with each other and talk, and they need that social time. So I think one of the things I'm noticing is that I got to spend even more time than I'm used to, and I don't think I was giving enough time for community already, and I really need to give even more time for community to let the students talk to each other and to vent. And on the other side, I think our students are really good at telling us what's going on in their head. That vocabulary about their own social emotional well-being just has blown me away. And it's wonderful to hear how students talk about themselves and understand where they're at and how hard COVID is. As a computer science teacher, you know, I was hoping that we could do more stuff technically, and my students were really adept actually at going with the technical flow, but they just weren't into it. But they had no problem like flipping to Google Classroom, unlike everybody else. So that was a real boon for me, but they weren't into it. I don't want to take up too much time, so I will let Ace read this slide.
Okay, I'll read both the questions. For the students, what's most important for you this year as a student? How has this changed since the start of the pandemic to now? And for the teachers, what are your priorities for your teaching practice or for students? How have these priorities changed since the start of the pandemic to now? I feel like what's most important for students this year is to, you know, straighten up because, yeah, last year you got to slack off a little bit, but now it's time to, you know, bring it all together because it's the final stretch. You want to graduate. You really want to see your dad and mom just looking at you smiling across the stage. But if you don't straighten up, you'll be going on the stage next year, though. Because you don't want to be that kid that all your friends are sitting there having fun doing their jobs and their vocals while you're just sitting there still inside of the classroom. Like, we waste so much of our time inside of classrooms every day, and you just want to get out. Once you see that opportunity, you need to go for it. Because if you're just going to stay there forever, then just live there. And thinking about it now, at least we're in school. That's all I can really say. Because if we still weren't, well, then no kid would really be straightening up. Everybody would still be doing the same thing, hiding behind their screen. Miss Lam, do you wish to go next?
Sure. So as a teacher, what are my priorities for your teaching practices or for my students? So one of the themes of the year, the essential question is agency, teaching students, how do I use my agency to, to make an impact, to help my community? So even if it wasn't part of the curriculum, after the year that we've had and knowing just how the pandemic has affected the mental health, just overall holistically how it has affected students and teachers, for me, my priority is making sure that students understand that they have a voice and their voice matters. So whether that be to advocate for yourself about school, saying that I am having trouble, I need help, I need a tutor, or having a voice for something outside in the community, a social issue that you care about, having a voice, being able to say your opinion about COVID, about vaccination, about the racial injustice happening. So a priority for me this year is making sure that my students not only know that they have a voice and their voice matters and it's powerful, but giving them the tools on how to use that voice to effect change around them. Because I do believe that we're living in a new age right now, with the pandemic, again, racial injustice, a lot of stuff is happening all around us. And, students in 2021, they're not the same as when I was in school in the 1990s. So as being a senior teacher, my seniors this is their last step before stepping out into the real world. They already have into the world. Next step. So for me, it's important for me to make sure that they're able to advocate for themselves, no matter what, whether it's academically, social emotional learning, speak out about the policies, government, whatever, but they have a voice and they're able to use it to effect change around them. And I will pass it along to Armely.
Thank you. Wow, I have a lot of priorities this year. And I kind of feel a little guilty that they're not academic focused. I would say my main priority has been so far social emotional learning, just making sure my students can be in the classroom and not be mean to each other. I'm not sure if this is a middle school thing, but unfortunately, like my students kind of, because of COVID, it's kind of like they went from elementary and are about to go to high school because now they're in 8th grade. They didn't really get enough time to get used to, the changes of middle school. They didn't really get to make friends because most of my students are coming from different smaller schools into the middle school. I think, a lot of them, went through a lot of loss and difficult situations while COVID was happening. And I think they don't have enough support to be able to deal or cope with those things, at least in healthy ways. I think building new routines, it's kind of impossible to just say, well, I'll do what I did in 2019, which was our last normal year, because that's just not where we are. So I think like looking at the past is just not really that helpful. So trying to figure out those routines, allowing students to help me figure out those routines, they can't just sit there and read a book for an entire class, right? I have to figure out what their interests are and seeing what's happening in the world. A lot of it has also been, I'm kind of realizing a lot of my students feel they don't need school to be successful. And I'm going to say I blame TikTok. Maybe the students can disagree with me, but just like social media has convinced at least my population of students that they can be successful, they can get a good job and do whatever they want in the world without education. I think a lot of people are lying to them on TikTok and YouTube. So trying to kind of really remind them that education is what really will open doors for them. Even if you want to become a YouTuber, you should learn how to read and write, and it's very important. So I think I've had to do a lot of convincing that, school is worth your time. And that nothing good will come out of, like a lot of them say, Miss, I'm going to drop out as soon as I can. And, they're too young to even be thinking about that. They're in 8th grade. I'm not sure if it's really social media. That's kind of my assumption, but just trying to build new routines that will make them love school again. Because I know that a lot of students, when they're in middle school, they still really love school. I'm not sure how, at what age that transition happens, but I'm seeing a lot of it. Yeah, that's my priority. And I will call on, why doesn't Emily? I'll call on Emily. Maybe you can correct me about the TikTok thing.
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I think that I've heard a lot of my my own friends and people that I surround myself with. I've heard a lot of them talking about not wanting to continue on to college, and that's a choice that they themselves are making, and I can't do that for them. But in a society where where having a college education has been increasingly more important, I've been trying to push them in that direction, but ultimately, like, it's up to them. And I do think that, like, social media has a role to do with that, because we've seen so many quote unquote influencers make millions from dancing in front of a camera, and I feel like a lot of students nowadays, a lot of youth, are thinking that, oh, they can do that too. And I think that it's just like it's just luck at that point with social media, and so it's not really reliable in a sense, and I don't think that we emphasize that enough, since TikTok has become so widespread. But to answer the question, this year I think I've just allowed myself as a student to be more forgiving for myself, because after last year, I'm going to be very blunt about this. My school saw its highest rates of mental health related hospitalizations ever. And so I've just been trying to spread to my friends, to underclassmen especially, that it's okay to forgive yourself after that year, because I don't think anyone was having a good year during the pandemic. I mean, during remote learning. And so I've just been trying to push the idea that, it's okay not to be okay. And so that's really where I'm trying to go this year. I mean, it's my junior year. Of course, like, SATs, PSATs are important, but also I'm just trying to focus on the mental health aspects of it. Mr. Mike, how are you doing?
So, thank you. Last year was a disaster. I couldn't agree more. My priorities are always to build community, and I'm not that good at it. And so I'm trying to learn better how to do it. And for sure, what's changed is how clear it is that that's even more important after COVID, to do it even more. So I think it's always more important than I've given it credit. And the idea that more experienced teachers, and I think my WriteBoston coaches were also telling me, is until you have community, you really can't get kids to do any of the other stuff. So if you care about the other stuff, you have to build community first. So I'm learning that slowly. I guess I'm not a great student myself, so I need to learn that quickly. So that's it for me. Now, what we haven't heard from Mackenley about this question. So Mackenley, what's most important for you this year as a student? How has this changed since the start of the pandemic to now?
Yes, for me this year, like my priorities, like they are very clear, because like I'm a senior, like for me, I think like graduating and then like getting that diploma and then get to the next steps. That's the most important thing to me right now. But like from last year though, like from like what Armely was talking about, and like to the question that she asked, I just wanted to add on that. Like some students saying that they want to drop out, they don't want to continue, to in school. I just wanted to say like me, I have felt this way, like last year because like all I had was time, I had all the time in the world. Like every day I would just listen to the favorite persons that I like to listen to, like watch the movies and stuff. Like I would listen to my favorite artists. They would say like oh, they make it and they like they didn't have to go to school. I would say like, oh, if they can do it like without school, I can do it too. But like now I came back to school and then like just from learning and stuff, I realized like I need those things like that the teachers are giving, those knowledge like I need to have them and then like to get like to the next steps. So like just that, because like I just want to say like those persons they going and then like pretty soon then they better like get back to that page like they wanna continue with school like they're not about to drop out, they just don't know it yet. So who have it gone yet though? And
I can jump in, Mackenley. I just wanted to share that I think, like many of the teachers here, my focus is also on social emotional learning and well-being, but that doesn't mean that we're not teaching content. I think, I have a lot of freedom and autonomy here at my school, which I really appreciate in terms of curriculum. And we did decide, before the pandemic that we were going to change a few of our units. And so, our first unit focuses on hope and does hope matter? And we're still teaching vocabulary. We're reading poems, we're analyzing songs, we're writing essays, we watched a movie, we're reading biographies. So they're still learning how to, closely read and conscientiously write and communicate effectively and think critically. But just the themes in which we're using and the topics, I think really lend themselves to, or are also teaching social emotional skills. And so I just don't want folks to think that it's like we're sitting in a circle every day and we're just talking about how we feel. I mean, that could be part of it, right? There's a check-in because truthfully, like it is this idea of Maslow before Bloom. Like if we don't feel okay and if we're feeling stressed, it's really hard to learn. So it's important to get a sense of where students are in class and, using check-in questions and maybe using circles. But there also is, there's academic content that we're teaching as well, which we as teachers think is really important. Someone's going to read that third question.
So if you could ask your school or school leaders to make one change after the past year and a half, what would it be? How empowered are you feeling right now to speak up and ask for changes? What do you think teachers, students, or community members can do to support these changes? And I can talk a little bit about this. So I've always felt empowered to speak up and ask for changes. That hasn't changed because of COVID. I would say right now, I'm a little confused as to, what changes to even ask for. And I talk to veteran teachers thinking they will have the answers, but it's like we're all new teachers all over again. So that's something I can say. Yeah, I think that's all I can say, really. There's some issues that feel so new sometimes that I'm just not sure if anyone will have the answer. And a lot of the time, no one has the answer, which has been something I've kind of been getting used to for the last year and a half, just, kind of being okay with not having the answer right away and letting time help us figure that out. Yeah, that's all I can share. So I will pass it on to try someone new. Ace.
Yeah. Something I would want to ask them is just to tell the teachers to, burn into the kids' head to get tested every week. Because that's what Mr. Berger does to us. Because, you know, like he keeps telling us, if you keep tech checking, then somebody gets it, then there's less chance of it spreading, less chance of school getting shut down again, less chance for us to be stuck back in a Zoom. So we can be in this little screen box of hell. And yeah, because I don't think I want to go back to this anymore. This doesn't seem fun. Because nobody really wants to get COVID. Nobody wants to sit there in bed all day sick, not being able to do anything. And it's like a real problem at this point because so many people are just disappearing at this point. You gotta really step in. Emily, do you wish to go?
Oh yeah, I can talk about this. I think especially after the changes that we've seen within, you know, our socio-political climate nowadays, I feel like the disparities between races needs to be talked about a lot more. And you know, in my school, where a majority of the students are students of color, and where a majority of the teachers aren't, there needs to be more education among teachers, among white teachers, how to properly address these issues, especially when talking about, you know, history, and how we can approach the impacts of history on our current society today. So that's one of the things that I've been really focusing on and calling more attention to within my school as well as the district. And I've also just been trying to bring more attention to acceptance overall because in the past few weeks I've seen a lot of mistreatment toward my schoolmates who are of minority or marginalized communities, and I really just want to be able to educate more people. And I don't have to be the one doing the educating. Um, I'm just trying to encourage people to be more accepting, to educate themselves, to want to be more informed, to become a more, you know, active member of the community, you know? And especially after this summer where I worked at the Audre Lorde Transformative Arts Summer. I think is that right, Armely?
Art school.
Art school. Sorry. Yeah, I worked with a bunch of middle schoolers in Worcester who come from minority communities, who are mostly of lower middle class families. And so that really brought more attention to my own prejudices that I had to unlearn, and it highlighted the importance of being more tolerant and open-minded of people who may not be as educated or as informed as I am, or as concerned regarding some issues as I am. So that's what I've been trying to focus on in my life. Mackenley, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. For me, if I could ask my school and like my teachers, like how to make a change, I would tell them like to focus on the mental health issue, like because like for me, from last year, like I was like everybody was in the house like stuck inside, not going outside, and that affect people, me personally because like I remember like thinking about stuff like I should not be thinking about, issues like that happening way back, like, and then like they came like to me like real fast, and then like I had to think about them, like that was very weird to me. So like for me, like if they could like focus on that, and then like trying to make that like their priorities, and then like to teach like some the students like like how to deal with that, that would be like a very good, because like this thing like is very like, I find it dangerous because like some students like they might be like they might be very depressed, and they're like thinking about like very like disturbing thoughts, and then like I think they should get help with that. Um, Christine, would you want to go next?
Sure. So yes to everything, especially what the students were saying. Really powerful to hear all of you share. I think two things that I've been thinking about. One is just for our leaders to give space in our school, like at a meeting, to kind of talk about and reflect on the things that also are still struggles for us. So we're noticing like lots of phone use in the classroom or students in the hallways. And some of these are just like student skills. Again, our students haven't been in the classroom in a while, so we need practice. But I would just love some dedicated time to talk about some of the concerns and issues we're seeing, and not just continue to plow ahead. That I think that the title of this webinar is Back to Changed Schools. And there are some things that have changed and some things that feel very, very much the same. And I'd love for there to be some more change, and use some of the lessons that we could have learned from online schooling around autonomy, and again, not having the bell ring and then you rush off to your next class, giving everyone some space to breathe and take a step outside before their next class begins to feel ready. And so we're not doing that. And then another thing that I just think I'd ask leaders for is around just more people and more support. And something that feels really positive and gratifying is that we have hired two of our former students, they're alumni from our school, as paras. And they're starting, and that just feels really amazing. A student from 2014, from 2012, another student is in the hiring process, and just how powerful for students, their current students, to see our grads come back and work and provide service and serve as role models. So that was an ask, and it's happening. So that feels really exciting. Ms. ML?
Oh, can I jump in? Before I answer the question, it's a quick answer, but I actually want to just really give a shout out to the students, to you, Ace, you, Emily, and you, Mackenley, because listening to you guys articulate yourselves remind me why I do this job, and why even after a year of hell, that you guys can come back and be here and present in this way. It's awesome. Ace, I'm feeling you on, getting tested so we don't go back to, I love it. I wrote it down, the screen box of hell, right? Like it's true. And Emily, you talking about, what to change, the importance of dialogue between an all-white staff and majority predominant people of color as a student, because one of the things that happen often, teachers do feel like, I'm the teacher, I'm in charge, I'm here, I'm going to present information, you receive it, and that's it. Especially if you come from my background. I went to parochial school, went to Latin Academy, so it was there was never the space for dialogue about just the racial disparities. And so I'm so happy to hear you say that, Emily, because what it makes me think of just the importance of being culturally responsive teachers, acknowledging that my differences and your differences, it may be a barrier to learning. So again, and for you, Mackenley, I do appreciate you just saying the importance of mental health. Which leads me to answer my question. Empowered, I do not feel empowered to speak to school leaders, only because of the way that I feel that what's the point of saying something if nothing's going to be done? Instead, I do feel empowered in my classroom as Kristen said, we do have a lot of autonomy. And so the ability to, make changes, with what I can control, I appreciate that. And lastly, what do I think teachers or community members can do to support these changes? I think the importance of recognizing the challenges, and again, I like the title of this, right? Back to a changed normal. Things are not the same. And even hearing, students share how difficult it was last year, but yet they're back this year. School leaders, stakeholders, it's important to be aware of the reality of it, is that our students who are coming back, they're coming back different, still the same, but different. And so it's important to have those collaborations, the partnerships, the resources in place, because, going from a year of remote learning, 18 months, and there's some people, they've come back with 4 to 5 members of their family dead. And we're asking them to come and be a student and learn and write. So again, these stakeholders, people that support the education, I think it's important for them to be aware of the full situation. The students sitting in front of you, even the teachers and the staff, we are coming with a lot. And
I was sorry, I was just going to jump in and sort of give, thank you for that, Ms. ML. Mike, I think you might have been the last person who hasn't responded. I wanted to give you a chance to respond before I pulled a few questions out of the chat.
Sure. So I got a really quick answer to that one, which is I would love it if we got rid of MCAS and by replacing it with a portfolio. Because I think portfolios would be able to handle things like COVID and would also be those portfolios, the requirements of those portfolios should be set by parents and students and industry. So that's my short plug for portfolios over MCAS. And I think that would help every student relax a little on their mental health. And I just want to echo what Ms. ML said, the students were amazing. Yes,
I feel like I've been sort of jotting down notes, and there's so many themes that are interconnected here, and that really resonate. And I just so appreciate the honesty that everyone has brought to this conversation. That's incredibly valuable. There are a couple questions that came up that I wanted to ask. I think I've got time for maybe 2. And one of them I think is particularly for the students, which is what motivated the students to participate in this discussion today? And what did they maybe hope to learn from it, from hearing their teachers speak?
Can I take on from that? Like what really motivated me was like, because like being from last year and then like experiencing all those stuff, like when I was told like to just came in here and then like just talk about it, and then like I felt very excited to like share my thoughts and to like to make like other people, like new people, like know about like what happened to me, and then like to the people like around me. I just wanted to make them like get the idea of like what I went through, and then like what others have had to go through. We want to take on from like Emily.
I think that over the course of how many months has it been? I think that the importance of community has been, yeah, me too, Ace, me too. The importance of community has really been at the forefront of my mind, because I worked with a community service group last year at my school remotely, and we basically worked on funding for our school food pantry and supply pantry. And so we had to get a lot of connections for that to be able to make it work, to get the funds that we needed. And so you know, I worked with my teachers, I worked with fellow students, I worked with different clubs in the school, and so that really highlighted how important building connections, especially during remote learning, was. And you know, this summer, with my work at the Audre Lorde Transformative Arts School, I my piano teacher was actually the one. Hi Nat, if you're watching this. My piano teacher was the one who initially introduced me to the job, and so that connection was able to bring me to one of the most life-changing moments that I've experienced this far. And so it's really been important to me to build connections and to emphasize how important defining what a community is, and how much teamwork it takes to actually become a community. Uh, I forgot where I was going with this. Oh, I'm sorry. But Ace, if you want to talk.
That was great, Emily. I think the question was just sort of asking students to reflect on why it felt important to participate in this event and share your opinions.
Oh, okay. So
Which is fine. I think you've done, I mean, it sounds like building community and staying connected is a very, very meaningful answer. Ace, what about you?
What is the question again?
Just sort of curious what motivated you to be willing to participate in this panel and talk about sort of your experience in the last 18 months.
It's kind of just because, maybe in like 20 years, there's not going to be stuff like this happening anymore. So it's good for people to go back and watch something like this to see, oh, these people didn't get a normal high school year. They had to deal with this. They had to deal with all of this stuff happening, all of these other variants of COVID going around now. So many things that just stops them from learning and has to make the teachers work even harder just to get it all smashed into our brain. Like, they have to put so much together in such little time now. But when they're there at school, they have all they need to quickly write everything down and write it all out.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you say that, Ace. It makes me sort of have this appreciation that we are like in the moment, like creating a primary source document that is like going to be an archive for a period of time that is written about for decades from here, and that we sort of real time talked about the experience. So I think that's a really interesting perspective. Another question that came up that might be the last one we have time for just was, we've talked a lot about the mental health issues, the strain across the board. And it sounds like what I was really happy to hear was that a theme of students sort of building self-advocacy skills around saying what they needed, saying what was or wasn't working. And I'm curious if any of you teachers or students could name any, kind of positive coping mechanisms that students did identify in the last 18 months that, can be carried forward, things that sort of help them find a tether. Is there anything that kind of came up that felt like a positive way to address the stress that we've been in?
Yes. To me, like what I did was, because like that really killed the time for me. Like I would just like listen to music and stuff, and then like watch some positive movies, the long ones, just watch them, and then like just get the vibe from it. I had the time, so like I would recommend people like to do that. Or like also they could just like meditate. This thing like came for me, like that's a new thing for me. Like now sometimes I just meditate like for like 1 or 2 minutes, like just sit there and then like just breathe. I think students can do that.
That's awesome. I obviously would love to keep peppering you with questions, and I'm sure all the panel, the audience members would love to get each of their questions answered, but I want to respect the long days that everyone had. And so I think I'm going to have to close the conversation down. I really can't reiterate how appreciative all of us at WriteBoston are for each of you to have spent your time sharing so candidly what it's felt like. I think there's a lot of, there's a lot being written and talked about schools, and I think we don't have enough opportunities to hear directly from the people experiencing it, what is working, what isn't working, how it's felt. So just really big debt of gratitude for sharing. For all the folks who are listening, we will send a recording of this event that you can either rewatch or you could share with a friend or colleague. And I think the kind of in the same vein of what I just said, I mean, I think we believe that educational transformation really needs to be led by the folks closest to the issues. And what we've been confronting is really complicated. And I hope that this conversation, for those of you who don't have sort of proximity to educators and students, has been illuminating and helped sort of like flesh out sort of the narratives that we've heard about learning. I think something that several folks said that I would really like to reiterate is, I think there's this sort of false dichotomy around academics and learning loss and and building social emotional sort of safety and processing for young people. And I think, many people have articulated in this hour that there are ways to do both at the same time. We heard Kristen talk about that in terms of connecting the sort of themes of SEL as sort of an entry point for academic work or discourse. And I really want to encourage people to continue thinking about the relationship, and that it's not a, one or the other, but it's a both and. So a really big debt of gratitude to everyone in school doing the hard work of teaching, and to you young people doing the hard work of learning and sticking with it and showing up. Really appreciate it. Thanks. I hope everyone has a great evening, and I'm gonna officially press the leave button, which I think just makes us all evaporate. Bye-bye.
Have a good evening, everyone. God bless.
Bye. Bye-bye.